Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, gave a round of interviews, and some of it to me was very, very interesting. Among other things, Rupert, he was saying that the intelligence available to him suggested that 97% of the Russian army was already in place in Ukraine, and that he has seen no evidence in his intelligence reports of a massive new concentration of forces or armour or equipment taking place, which suggests, doesn't it, that the idea we've been hearing some pundits talking about for some weeks now of a massive new offensive with new forces, massive new troop numbers being thrown into the battle with huge amounts of armour, maybe hundreds, maybe a couple of thousand of tanks joining a new offensive, that may just all be a mirage. Russia maybe is not going to do that because it can't.
Well, I think that's an entirely reasonable possibility, and there's smoke and mirrors at play all the time. So the Ukrainians have perfectly reasonably been bigging up the possibility of a Russian counterattack, maybe because they genuinely believe there's one on the way, or maybe because they're actually trying to mask their own activity. We don't know. Leading commentators and experts have been saying for about the last week now that the Russian counterattack, such as it is already underway.
Yes.
If that is the case, it's a pretty uninspiring counterattack. You would typically expect a very large buildup of forces, hard to mask in this day and age, and you would therefore expect American and other intelligence agencies to be aware of the buildup. And indeed, you would expect the Ukrainians to then be striking that build-up before it even ever gets into the fight.
Yes.
What we've seen so far is quite limited, doubling down of their ongoing attacks around Bakhmut in the center of the front and elsewhere, as opposed to something really significant that might lead to a breakthrough.
Now, there's said to be some concern about the possibility of a major Russian air offensive. The Russian Air Force and its warplanes are said to be pretty much intact. They have not been seriously depleted by the war in Ukraine. But against that, we hear the Defence Secretary saying, look, Ukraine still is supplied with a pretty good force of missiles, anti-aircraft missiles and other anti-aircraft weapons. The Russians could not acquire that kind of air superiority.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is some concern that the Russians may, if there isn't a ground attack coming, that they may try and do something from the air. There was an article in the Washington Post that quoted US military planners who are allegedly concerned about this, and that there might be a build-up of Russian air power. What that would amount to in real terms, I think, is a moot point, because their air force and their helicopter force has not performed any better than their ground forces. But we shouldn't discount that as a possibility. But as Ben Wallace has been at pains to stress, the Ukrainians have a pretty potent air defense umbrella in place. I think there are plans to strengthen that yet further, and indeed hasten the rate at which it is reinforced.
Yes, and the point was made very, very clearly that the raging debate about supplying Ukraine with warplanes and combat jets was at this stage pretty much beside the point, given that it would take, I don't know, huge amounts of resource to supply, to equip and re-equip, to repair, and all the rest of it. The support that you need around a force of combat jets. Not possible now, not possible for the very foreseeable future. Yes, maybe relevant much later on after the war is won. And we're talking about bolstering Ukraine against future threats.
Yes, and interesting, they've just had the NATO defence ministerial meeting, and fast jets did not appear to be high up the agenda. Certainly it wasn't mentioned in Jens Stoltenberg's final conference. I think what President Zelensky has done very well all the way through is kept the pressure on Western nations about military hardware. And it is not unreasonable for him to feel that over time he is going to need advanced jets. And if he doesn't make the case now, yes, those aircraft and pilots and supplies will take a long time. But he wants to make the case now so that the ultimate decision happens sooner, not later, because he knows how long the lead times will be. And to me, this is part of a building towards a long-term defense relationship with Ukraine through the war and indeed beyond it.